turn that off. Thingy. I'm listening to my subtle music in the background.
No problem at all. Good evening and welcome to Suffering in Silence with Evangelist Tia here on Love Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio. We're here with you every Friday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern. Love Bay, we are continuing to rise out of the ashes together. Our topic on tonight, and this was a topic that was really and important and came up several times for me personally and those close to me. Self-care when loved ones won't help themselves. So we're going to talk about that tonight and try to give our I don't know, do I want to say expertise, our opinions, our 2 cents. We have with us our co-host on this evening, Jennifer Peterkin, who is the host of Human Experience, also vice president of Rise Out of the Ashes, Inc. And we have with us Bob Wood, who is president of Rise Out of the Ashes, Inc., our nonprofit. So listeners, if you have any questions or comments for us, you can email us at sufferinginsilencedv@gmail.com, or you can text your comments or questions to 437-778-3299. If you also have any resources that you would like to share with us on a national or local level from your country, your community, faith organizations, you can also email us at sufferinginsilencedv@gmail.com. And with that, Jen, I'll ask if you would go first and greet our listeners and viewers tonight.
Sure, gladly. Thank you. Good evening, Love Bay. It's so great to be back on Suffering Silence with Evangelist Tia, and of course with Bob as well. As Tia said, I am the host of the Human Experience podcast, the podcast I launched just over a year ago. And it's about our stories and how they shape who we are and who we become in our lives. I am also a survivor of domestic violence and just continue to be honored and privileged to walk beside Tia and everything she's doing to advocate for victims and survivors.
Thank you, Bob.
Good evening, everybody. Love Bay listeners. It's always a pleasure to be here with Evangelist Tia and Jennifer. Retired Title IX coordinator, retired police officer. So I've spent the majority of my adult life dealing or trying to assist people who've been traumatized by domestic violence, dating violence, etc. Son of somebody who went through domestic violence, so I viewed it from a child's perspective. It's always a pleasure to be here. I don't know how much expertise I carry, but it's always good to be here. I mean, I could run for Congress. I have that much expertise at least.
I would vote for you, Bob.
Thank you.
I would too.
I would move so I could live in your jurisdiction so I could vote for you.
Yes, it would be interesting to see the House seat on fire. Anyway, it is a pleasure to be here as always.
Wow. Well, thank you both for being here as usual. Love Bay, we want to start with sharing some resources. And again, if you would like to help us with Rise Out of the Ashes, Inc., you can go to GoFundMe, look for our nonprofit to help us do what we do. Right now, we're still in the phase of raising funds for our immediate emergency endeavors, which we help individuals with, victims and survivors. We help financially with things such as doctor's visits, co-pays. We help with medication, prescriptions, and co-pays for that, supplies, toiletries, utilities, rent, mortgage. We help as much as we can, but we need help to be able to continue to help. So again, if you would like to, you can visit our GoFundMe page. Go to GoFundMe and look for Rise Out of the Ashes, Inc. We want to share with you Pastor Darius Daniels. He's the pastor of Change Church. He has several locations in the United States. His website is dariusdaniels.com, and his YouTube channel is Darius Daniels TV. And again, listeners, Love Bay, I say, at the point of coming into contact with Pastor Daniels Ministries, this is a point that you are far enough along in your healing process where you've done that initial work and you're ready to go further. You're ready because there's always a deeper healing. And I recommend this for anyone. It doesn't have to have to deal with domestic violence, but it could be just any area of your life, and you're just ready to move on and forward. I want to share the National Teen Dating Abuse Helpline. This is in the United States. Their website is loveisrespect.org. Their phone number is 866-331-9474. In the UK, we have the National Domestic Abuse Helpline. Their website is nationaldahelpline.org.uk. Their phone number is 080820000247. Or you can also visit Women's Aid, AID, and their website is womensaid.org.uk. And the last resource we have to share for this evening is the Asia Foundation. Their website is asiafoundation.org. So our topic on tonight is self-care when loved ones won't help themselves. So Jen, I'll go to you first, just for your thoughts, your input. But the first thing that I wanted to say is that you absolutely have to take care of yourself. Sometimes it's just not fair, but you have to make it fair. And I want to stress, we are not talking about situations where individuals really need help and they are reaching out for and they're seeking help. We are specifically talking about a situation where you have provided the information and the resources that an individual may need. And for whatever reason, they're choosing not to act on it. They're choosing to stay where they are. They're choosing to not move forward, and they may have the ability to do so, but they're not doing it. That's completely different. And one of my friends said something to me. It was very, very simple, but it was also powerful, because I was moving through a situation where I had given all I could give to a particular friend. And she said to me, I don't want to call the phone numbers. I don't want to do whatever. I have the information. I'm just not moving on it. But she continued to call me, to want to talk about the situation, just to say, I'm miserable. Okay, that's not helping. Like, and she not only had the resources, but was able to make a change. Now, I don't know why that change did not happen, but I had done all that I could do. And in talking to some individuals, someone said to me, well, it's not fair, but you are the friend. It's not fair, but you are the minister. It's not fair, but. And so I talked to one of my dear friends, Pastor Terry Leon. She said, you need to change that sentence. She said, it's no longer, it's not fair, but. She said, it's not fair, and. It's not fair, and you're not going to keep me up to 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning saying the same things over and over again. It's not fair, and I am not going to totally disrupt my day because you're not acting on the very, very good advice and resources that I've given to you. That little change right there is not fair, and this is what I'm going to do for me, made a great difference in my life, because you have to, and this is our word, you have to set boundaries. And it's very hard when someone is close to you, when it's a friend, when it's a family member. You want them to be okay. You don't want to see anyone hurting. You don't want to see anyone suffering. But on the other hand, if I have given to you all that I can give, if I have pointed out to you, this is available to you, and in addition to me, and probably not in addition to me, in some cases it should be, instead of calling me, you need to call these counselors, these hotlines. You need to visit these domestic violence agencies. In light of that, some individuals, for whatever reason, won't. And you can't live your life in somebody else's fear. You can't live your life in someone else's pain. If you're not willing to help yourself, I can't help you. I can't tell you how many days, I've just been okay. Like, there's me, I've gotten through my issues, or, I'm all right. I'm just having a good day. and all of a sudden, like, I'm just brought from 100 to 0, feeling bad because of somebody else's issues, and that's not a good place to be at. So you do have to take care of yourself. So Jen, I go to you first on your your thoughts about it. Taking care of yourself when those closest to you are reaching out to you and they're not helping themselves.
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts actually. So I can keep them all together and it'll make sense. But I think specifically in the advocacy sphere, one of the things that we learn very quickly in advocacy is that you cannot make decisions for other people, right? Like you cannot be the one to pick up where their abuser left off. And that is sometimes hard to hear for people because you want to fix things. You see the path forward for this person and you see like, look, like it's really not that hard conceptually, right? Like theoretically it's not that hard. These are the steps you have to take and you will start to see results, or you will start to get better. Of course life isn't that simple, but I think one of the most frequently asked questions I get as an advocate, and I'm sure you do too, Tia, is what do I do when somebody in my life is in an abusive situation or experiencing any type of trauma? How do I handle it? What do I do? Because nothing I'm doing is working. And it's so hard to answer that question because the answer really is nothing. Like there are
Right.
things you can do, but you can't get them out of this situation. And so I think, we do talk about boundaries a lot on this show. It's our favorite word. And they're so important. Boundaries are so important. But what we also have to realize is that people that are in active trauma are not good at setting boundaries. So we cannot expect them to know where to draw the line.
Right.
Like you are the healthy one, hopefully, in that relationship at that point. So you are responsible to draw those boundaries, because the person in active trauma, in survival mode, is not going to, unfortunately, be the one that's going to be able to do that. They don't have the capacity to do that. And no, it's not fair. And you have to be the one to set the boundaries. On the opposite side of that, though, I would also caution people from becoming so frustrated that they completely abandon people. Because I see that a lot as well. You get to a point where this person is not getting better as quickly as I want them to get better, or they're not healing the way I would like them to heal. And again, unfortunately, we can't control how other people act and react to situations in their lives. And even if this person is making the wrong choice, um, you know, I would say there are reasons to pull away completely from a relationship, but I think you can also be draw some heavy boundaries with people, and still be somebody that when they are ready to heal, they know that you're still available to that you still want to help them.
Yeah.
And I think, it's walking a tightrope. It's tension, and we're not comfortable with tension, but it exists in our lives everywhere. And so, holding this tension loosely, I think, is super important, that we become people that are able to draw those boundaries with unhealthy people in our lives who are not moving forward, but also being able to recognize that they don't have the capacity to do it right now. And so hopefully at a future time, when the capacity is there, when they're making those choices to move forward, we can still step in as friends, as family, as, people who have not been so burned out from a relationship, and say, I'm here for you. Like, I still want to be here for you. And I think how you show up for people fluctuates. it doesn't have to be the same thing every time or for everybody. I think that there are a lot of factors that come into play, part of which is the health of the other person, part of which is your own health, part of which is, what season of life you're in. So yeah, I think we should be really cautious about trying to be the hero in somebody else's story. But that doesn't mean that we don't walk beside people and try to kind of come alongside them when they need help, and just notice them, notice people where they're at, love them where they're at, but that doesn't mean you have to save them.
Exactly. I mean, I think you made a lot of great points.
I told you I had a lot of things going on.
Well, we have about 45 more minutes, so we can go through it all. But I think what you said about the healthy one setting boundaries, that is, I think that's absolutely key. And you have to set those boundaries no matter if the other person, friend or family, if they're going to be angry, if they're disappointed, and they very well may be, it's okay. You still have to set boundaries. You cannot call me at 3:00 every morning telling me how miserable you are, and you're not doing anything to change your situation. So those boundaries have to be set. And just as we tell victims and survivors, pay attention to your feelings. Pay attention to how the situation is making you feel. I say the same thing to advocates, to friends, and to family. And personally, I am speaking from personal experience. I could feel when my compassion, my sensitivity was being taken advantage of. I could feel when I was being used and being pulled on, because you're not following my advice. You're not doing what I'm, advising you to do. I paid attention to that and didn't ignore it, and knew that I had to reset some issues. And it is okay to say, I can't have that conversation with you, but here's the phone number. Here's the website. Go to the hotline.org. Here's the phone number. Call to speak to someone who is specifically trained in this area to deal with you. They're available 24 hours a day. You can call a national number. You can call a local number near you. You can go to different websites to get information. I'm still here for you as a family member. I'm still here for you as a friend. If you want to talk about anything else that's going on in your life, let's do that. But this particular issue, I can't be weighed down by it. And it's very, very hard on friends and family as well. So their feelings do have to be taken into account. And it's okay to redirect. It's okay if someone, if they call you or come into contact with you and they start going down the path that you cannot emotionally handle, it's okay to redirect the conversation into a different area. It's okay to say, I can't help you. I don't have the emotional bandwidth, but these are some resources here that I believe would be good for you. But you have to be willing. You have to be willing to do what you need for yourself. I gave a speech the other night. I was talking about surviving. You have to make the decision to survive. You have to make the decision that you want the support. You have to make the decision that you want to move on in your life. And then you have to take advantage of the resources that are put in front of you. Nobody else can make that decision for you. So on one hand, we do want to be very, very careful, because it can be a tight line that we're walking. You don't want to make anybody feel like, I'm just shutting down. I'm shutting you out. I don't want to deal with it anymore. You don't want to get to that point, but you just want to be responsible with yourself, with your emotions, with your boundaries, and with the other person as well, because you don't want to become a crutch. You don't want to become an enabler. And I'm specifically speaking of instances where there are people who don't move for whatever reason. Is not that they can't, is that they won't. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a difference, because some people are in situations where they can't leave. They can't get out of it. There are things that they can't do. And then there are other situations where people you won't take the next step. And it could be fear, it could be whatever. But that doesn't open a door and give the right to take advantage of another person's kindness, another person's compassion. And because of what we do, there are individuals who have access to us just because they're in our space. So I can get phone calls, at the drop of a dime, and I had to put things like that in the boundaries. So, because Jen, I know who you are and what you do, I could call you up with anything because I'm your friend. I know you're going to take my call. I know you're not going to hang up on me. I know if I have any issue or question about police or anything, I can call Bob. He's going to take my call. He's going to talk with me. It can get to a point where people are in our circles and they're taking advantage of you. And that's when you have to, you do have to set those boundaries. So I think people having access to us, be it family or friends or even acquaintances or coworkers, whomever, just in our space, that's something that you have to be mindful of, something that you have to control. So Bob, what do you think about this?
A lot.
Because it's hard. It's really hard because I know, like me, I want to be there for everybody. I want to help everybody. I want to do as much as I can, physically, emotionally, financially. I mean, several times I've drained my bank account, but I had to learn. I have to have boundaries in place, physically, financially, emotionally. I mean, if I called you every day, same time every day, with the same complaints, and all you can do is give me the same advice and I'm not following it, that's going to start to
Oh yeah,
start to rub you the wrong way.
It's going to wear on you.
Yes, yes.
One thing I would like to say to people who are the friend, who are the advocate, whatever. Like I said, my background and having dealt with people who have traumatized other people who do this can be very unpredictable. If they see you as the advocate as a threat, you may end up being a person that's targeted. So please, please, please take care of yourself. Be aware if this is somebody who psychologically abuses somebody, you'll be amazed at what comes your way. Obviously, physical speaks for itself. We've read the horror stories of a friend getting hurt trying to intervene. And unfortunately, I had to deal with some of those in my prior career. But it's difficult in both careers I've been in, especially police work. Don't take the job home. And I used to always go home going, stop following me. I don't, it's difficult to let go, especially if you're good at your job, because what makes you good at your job or being the friend is that you care.
Absolutely.
And you're right. People can take your kindness, your empathy, and they can cross over the fence, so to speak, and just, always going to be there, always going to be there. I'm going to speak from a personal example, if you don't mind.
Sure.
My grandmother, Rosalie McComas, God love her. She waited 15 years to hear me call her grandmother because my father left. And there was all kinds of, nobody wanted to tell me anything, and a lot of, which hence my wonderfully misspent youth at the Royal Q Club, just fueled that. But once I started unraveling all that, and that not taking advice or not letting go, I actually went down to the Library of Congress because her brother, my great uncle, was a very famous writer and all of his stuff was there. So I found a series of letters between her and my uncle, and I could track the years of what my father was doing or had done. And the first words that came out of my mouth, somebody should have slammed the door, but they couldn't let go because they cared. And I'm like, that, what you just said, there's the example of they became the enablers.
Yes.
They became the enablers. Because my wife, I remember Lynn looked at me and she said, oh my God, I had no idea. I said, well, in some retrospects, either did I. But it's, and again, you can reverse that because my my uncle, my grandmother's brother, I could see at the point where he started telling my father, no, no more, or said to Rosalie, my grandmother, Rosalie, you got to shut the door. Rosalie, you have to do this. And he was an alcoholic and had other issues. And by the time my poor grandmother died, he had taken everything she had. I mean, I was all she had left in the world. And I'm reading these letters going, she should have listened to her brother. And it's sad because that was the outcome there. And Jamie, God love him, he never abandoned her. But it was, because, and they're also from a very, very different time frame. They were both born in the late 1800s where everything was quiet and in-house, especially in a good Irish Catholic family. But it's, so I speak from that aspect because that and again from police work where I saw people who were trying to be the advocates, and it's as you said, it's hard to find the boundary because you don't want to abandon the person, and most of us don't. Know that when you set the boundary, the person may get angry at you.
Absolutely.
But you can sit there and say, I'm sorry you're angry. I really am. I'm sorry you're angry. But you have to understand, if you want me to continue to try to help you at all, I've got to take care of myself as well. I can't help you or listen to you if I'm burned out. Period. Ended.
Exactly. I mean, and it's we can still have conversations.
Yes.
We can still go to the movies. We can still we can go out to lunch. But when we get into this area that I can no longer emotionally handle for you, it's okay to say, you need to speak to a counselor. You need to speak to someone who's trained in this area. And if I have said this to you several times already and you're still doing it, you're still not doing it for whatever reason, then you have to understand, I have to set my boundaries. I'm not closing the door on you. I'm not saying that our friendship is over. If we're related, I'm not saying I never want to see a family member again. But I am saying this topic right here has to be off the table. Yeah. So if you want to have lunch, you want to have a good afternoon together, and you want to come over for the evening, we're watching TV, just having time together, we can do that. But my boundary stops right here because you need something that I can't give you. So it's okay to say, I'm here for you, but when we get into this area, you need to take advantage of the domestic violence agencies. You need to take advantage of whatever resources and tools that are available. And today it's a lot easier. 2024, it's a lot easier with information being available. I believe this is where education comes into play because individuals, victims, survivors, or even abusers can get information to learn about themselves, to learn about others, to learn just about domestic violence itself, sexual assault. Information is there, but a person has to be responsible for themselves. And there are times when you trying to be an advocate, trying to help, that family member or that friend, you can actually turn into the one who's being abused by. And it doesn't feel good. It's not fun because you're already tortured inside. You want to help this individual. You can't. Your hands are tied and you're watching them continuing to stay where they are. You have to do what you need to do to protect yourself mentally, physically, and emotionally. You should not be up every night, 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning because of decisions that someone else won't make for themselves.
I think you made a good point too when you were talking about, going to the individual. I can be there. I have to do this. I will do this. The individual at one point has to be receptive to what you're saying. And there's various ways to go about that. I mean, I know as a Title IX coordinator, my office was right next to our counselors. And I'm a typical Irishman. I'm a pretty good listener and talker, and I can do the old counseling across the tabletop. And I would literally tell people that I was working with, look, I understand the need to blow off steam, whatever. I said, if you need to come in my office and shut the door and howl at the moon, then by all means do it. But then here was my boundary: I am not a counselor. I will listen to you. I will I will comment. I will try. I will give you resources. I am not a counselor. And I would always, and I said, and if I say to you, I think you need to see the counselor, you need to work with me. Because I'm not saying that because I'm trying to slough it off. I'm trying to make sure you get what you need. And God forbid, like I said, if you need the advice and the guidance of a counselor, you don't want to take it from a crusty old retired cop. Plain and simple. Plain and simple.
I think that's a good distinction because, and one of the things you said, Tia, about, you can become abused by the person that is already being abused. And I think what we have to realize too is, I think there's sometimes a disconnect. We know that abuse is cyclical, but we're looking at this person right now who is in active trauma or, just coming out of it, right? And you're like, how could they be an abuser? They're hurting. That's exactly how. So those things go together. This is how abused or victims become abusers. And so, having those boundaries really is so important because you are being a cycle breaker by having those boundaries with people. You are making sure that, they are held to account for their own emotional health and well-being, because at the end of the day, nobody can do that work for you.
Yes.
Can I piggyback on what you just said? It's cyclical, and I'm going to use myself. Don't get me wrong. There are people who have had it infinitely worse down the line than I am. My mother, unfortunately, just did not have good luck with some of the men she chose, and one of them was, again, an alcoholic, physical and emotional and abuser. So I grew up in a house with a lot of volume in it, shall we say. And that became a norm for me. If I lost my temper, I would just, and being with Irish DNA on top of it, they could hear me. And it was like, and there was also the physicalness between he and I, which eventually changed. But with my own children, I never laid a hand on. And that was something that just never entered my head because that was so abhorrent to me from where I had been. But what didn't go was the voice. Mm-hmm. And I remember one day I went off about something. I wasn't mad at anybody in the house. In fact, I think it was something from work that I just, And when I turned around, my youngest son literally was, I think he was 3, 4, he was tiny. Mm-hmm. My volume and anger was so intense. I watched him in the corner cringing. And I went, this stops now. This stops now. Because it was cyclical. And what stayed with me was the anger and the volume. This is perfectly acceptable. No, it's not. No, it's not. And I said, you just made a jackass out of yourself in front of a 3-year-old. Well done. Really well done. But that's, again, there's, as you say, the abused can become the abuser and not even realize it.
Exactly.
I had no idea that my anger, like I said, I'm going, well, I didn't hit anybody. I didn't touch anybody. Mm-hmm. No, but you blew a hole in the wall screaming, mm-hmm. And that was a light bulb and a game changer for me from that day forward.
I think that is self-awareness. And everyone has to come to that point of being mm-hmm. self-aware, mm-hmm. whether you are the one who was abused or you are the abuser. If true change is going to take place in your life, you have to be honest and you have to be aware of who you are and what you are and what you do. And as a friend or a family member, the person who you want to help or you're trying to help, when you put your boundaries in place, they may become angry with you. They mm-hmm. may be disappointed. But you know what? If they're really serious about getting help and becoming better, that's going to help them as well. So if you're angry, be angry. If you're disappointed, be disappointed, because the other side of that is me letting you put me in a place that I can no longer emotionally handle. And so all of us have to come to that place of where we are going to grow and we are going to survive and we're going to move on in our lives. It has to happen. And for a person to get there to that point, it may take you saying, you can't call me at 3:00 in the morning anymore. But here is a phone number that you can call. You can call the 24-hour hotline. And again, we are not talking about turning your back on a person who needs help. We are not talking about just closing down. I never want to speak to you again. It's just absolutely over. Forget you. That's not what we're saying. We're saying set your boundaries. We're saying no, you can't call me 2, 3 o'clock in the morning every morning. But here are the resources that will help you. And it's something that everybody needs, no matter where it comes from. It doesn't even have to be a situation that deals with trauma. Everybody needs to be self-aware. Everyone has to manage themselves. That's called being an adult. And I have my own story. The counselor that I initially had at DAP, when I made the phone call, it just so happened that she was actually the supervisor who picked up my call. She wasn't even supposed to be there. She took my call, and that's how I began my process with DAP. So I went through my process with her. I think, I don't know, a couple years, maybe 2 or 3 years. This was my counselor when I dealt with the area of domestic violence. I was very comfortable with her. Well, one day she moved. She left. She went to another state, and I was still talking to her. But once she moved to another state, there had to be a change, and that's because of laws, because of where she was. She could no longer legally be my counselor. Well, I didn't care about that. Like, I don't care about the law. I'm like, you're my counselor. I know you. I'm comfortable with you. But she was very professional. She was very set. She didn't want to do anything that was unethical or illegal on her side of things. So she stood firm in her position as a counselor, as an advocate. She said, I can't counsel you anymore, but here's another resource. And she went so far as to make a warm transfer, because I was so adamant. I said, I can't go through this again. I cannot meet a new person, go through my entire story again, and try to get acclimated with this person. I said, I just did not want to do it. But, the counselor that she recommended, she did do a warm transfer. She talked with this counselor, make sure they had all my information. So I felt comfortable with my first conversation, going to meet this new person. Now, I said all that to say, I was hot. I was angry. I didn't want to go through that process again. And I had become, acclimated and attached. This was a safe person for me. This was a safe space. But that happened because it was time for me to move on. It was time for me to grow a little bit more. And that was my choice. I could have just, said, well, forget it. You're in another state. I'm not moving on with counseling anymore. That's just it. But I made the choice to speak to another counselor and to continue my healing process in that way. So me having that moment where, yes, I was angry, I was disappointed. I was like, I don't care about laws from one state to another. It doesn't make a difference to me. I just did not care. But she stood her ground. Again, she's very professional, explained everything. I just didn't want to hear it. But I still had to, I had to accept that. I had to take that. I had to be respectful of her time. I had to be respectful of her job. I had to be respectful of the consequences that would have come to her if something had happened. And you have to stand on your own 2 feet. You have to stand your ground and do what's best for you. And that helped me to get to another place, a new place. So that's why in this moment, I can say right now, I've been on both sides of that, having to set boundaries for myself and having to abide by the boundaries that someone else set when they were encountering me and dealing with me. So we're not saying that it's easy, but we are saying it must be done. You have to do it or you'll drive yourself crazy. You will. And as Bob said earlier, you can't help someone if you can't help yourself. It's not there. There is no way at all that you should be just out of your mind, dizzy, just frustrated and upset because of somebody else's issues. That's not how life works. You should not be agitated, frustrated, upset and angry because somebody else pulled you into a rabbit hole that they don't want to come out of.
Mm-hmm.
You can't, it just.
Yeah, I think that, again, that goes back to the tension that we hold in life in a lot of different situations, right? But we have to be able to be a little bit uncomfortable there when we are disappointing people. And I say that as a ridiculous people pleaser. So I struggle. And it's a struggle, but it's true. I mean, tension is a part of life, and walking beside people through these things is hard, but to be able to do it in health is the greatest gift that you can give people you're in relationship with. And I think we all say this too as people that have been there and have done work, right? Like, we're not saying that this is easy. It's probably the hardest thing you will do. Go walk through healing after trauma of any sort. But it is important. It can feel like it's never going to get better. And I think that is where there's a lack of motivation, because I remember feeling that. I remember feeling like I don't have anything within me to make this better. Like, this is just how it is. And I look back and wow, was I a treat to deal with? But, it's part of the process. And it does get better, and I feel like maybe that sounds flip to somebody that is going through it right now. And if that's somebody that's listening, I do not mean it like that. I understand it's easier to say than do, but it is the best thing you will do for yourself.
Yes. But I wholeheartedly agree. And if you are serious about yourself, if you're serious about your life, to hear it does get better, it may be irritating, because it was irritating for me to hear it does get better. But that's what the healthy person has to put forward. And that's what the healthy person has to continue to express until the victim or survivor can get to that point of where they see it, they know it, and they understand it. Because that is true. It does get better. You can't see that right now. You don't feel that right now because you're actually in it. But being the healthy person, it's not going to get better if I keep allowing you to do what you're doing right now. Mm-hmm. And so being the one on this side, being the advocate, being the counselor, being the friend, being the family member, I have to say, this right here needs to change. This is what you can no longer do to me. This is no longer how we can communicate, but here's the resource for you. Here's the tool. That's what we have to do on our end so it can actually get better, because it's not going to get to that point if we become enablers and we stay that way. It's not, and it doesn't feel good. It does not feel good. It's not a process. You don't just get up and smile. It hurts. It's hard. It hurts. It's hard work, but it has to be done. But when we say it does get better, it does get better, but it gets better with you doing the work. It gets better with you taking advantage of the resources that we're putting in front of you. It's not going to get better if you know that you can stop by my house 5 o'clock every night and we run through the same conversation with you taking no action. And then we just meet up again tomorrow when you stop by. That's not going to get better.
If I can, this is going to sound here's the philosophical part of me. Every journey begins with one step, and healing is a journey.
Yes.
And if that person doesn't take that first step, they'll never complete the journey. Mm-hmm. And if that means I got to step away from them and take that first step, so be it. Yes. And I will say this to those of us who are on the advocate, friend, whatever side, there will come a day where the person will walk away from you because you've done your part, and you can't let that hurt you either. I mean, you just you got to realize it. It's like watching your kids leave home when they go off to college. Lynn was like, well, can we follow Matt? No, he's playing, he's playing, he's a college athlete. He does not want mom following him in the car. Ouch. I said, yeah, I just called him up that night and said, you have no idea what I just saved you. But it is like that because this is someone you've developed a bond with and you care about, but by the same token, it's time to take a step back, let them go. And,
Yes.
and again, it's the old adage. They'll come back. I mean, they'll, at one point you're going to see or hear something again when it's time for them to do that, because you are the part of the journey they have stepped through and they need to keep going.
Yes.
Then you don't want to be the person that holds them back. You just don't want to do that. I hope that makes sense.
Absolutely. It makes sense. And you know what? And if they don't come back, then that's okay.
Yeah.
As you were talking, like it just came to me when you said departure. There are two departures. There's either going to be a healthy departure.
Mm-hmm.
This person has gotten what they need, and so maybe they don't. Maybe our relationship changes for whatever reason. They're not leaning on me so much anymore, or, they just gotten what they needed and moved on. So I'm not a part of their process. I'm not a part of their life as much. That's a healthy departure because they've grown and they moved on. And you can't be upset with somebody when they grow and they move on and they're, making progress. Then what came to me was there will be some hurtful departures. When you put your boundaries in place, there will be some hurtful departures because some people will walk away from you out of anger or the disappointment. I had to be very clear with an individual when I put a specific individual, I put boundaries in place. Like, this is what this will be. This is what this cannot be anymore. And I never heard from the person again because I had to put boundaries in place. So the friendship was not what I thought it was because I'm no longer enabling you. I recognize what was happening and I'm saying this cannot be. I'm still here for you otherwise, but this right here, we have to work on this. We have to change it. That wasn't acceptable to them. They still wanted to be able to move across my boundaries in a way that I was not going to allow. So a hurtful departure took place. That person didn't grow. They didn't move through their hurts and their pains, but I couldn't allow myself to be drawn further in. Like, I can't help you. And I tell individuals, when you come into my life, so either we're on the same level and we're just going to help and support each other and we're just going to move forward, or I'm at a place that you need to get to and I'm going to pull you up, or you are at a place that I need to get to and you're going to pull me up. However that works, it is not going to be a situation of you pulling me backwards or you pulling me down. That's not going to work. I've come too far in my life to get to a point to where someone else's foolishness or someone else's hurt or pain or trauma is pulling me down a level. That's not going to happen. So anybody who comes into my life for any reason, we're going to maintain each other or we're supporting each other to go to another place. And that's just how it's going to be. So it's always going to be some continual movement. We're moving forward, or we're moving up, we're moving out. If you want to stop that progress or cause it to go backwards, it's just not going to happen. Right. And you have to accept that just may be, and it's okay. So, we're not saviors of the world. We do what we can. We try, but can't save everybody. And you can't lose yourself trying to do, really, this just came to me. You can't lose yourself trying to do what you're not equipped to do.
No, absolutely.
You can't. So just because you read a little bit of information does not mean that you're now qualified to open your front door and you have 2-3 people coming in on a rotating basis, giving of yourself mentally and emotionally. You're not equipped to do that. No.
And that's what you said is absolutely true. And there is a definite safety line in there that you're talking about, because as you said, some people will read something and with the best intentions, step in that I am qualified to do X, Y, and Z, and they're not, also emotionally equipped to handle the trauma that's going to be put on them. I mean, all of us know if you are around people who have been traumatized, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but it's really, sooner or later it's going to impact you. You're around trauma constantly trying. There's that, it's like, SpongeBob can only absorb so much, and it's going to happen. And that was, as a matter of fact, when I was in law enforcement, that was one of the issues that I used to always, they loved me when I used to go to annual in-service training because I'd raise my little hand because they'd say something was wrong and I'd go, well, wait a minute, hold it. It's wrong. Why are we doing it this way? And I don't want to hear that it's too expensive to change. They talked about these things and they didn't provide an outlet for law enforcement to let it go. Like I said, long ago, I'm really dating myself here. I don't mean to sound like Rip Van Winkle, but in that time frame, if you turned around and said to a supervisor, I want to talk to the departmental counselor, psychologist, that was a fate worse than death. And there was the misunderstanding was just so there was that, as you said, it's police used to try to help police. And that was the worst thing in the world anybody could have done. Here you got one guy that just dealt with somebody all day long who was traumatized, trying to help somebody else who's now dumping everything he had on top of yours. But so by the time you got home, it's like, okay, I'm going to the basement. I'm just going to hit the bag for 20 minutes. Leave me alone. So that, people need to remember that, you unless you have the train, and I'm not saying you don't listen to your friend. I'm not saying that at all. But know where you can go and where you cannot go in that conversation. Like I said, every person that came into my office, you want to close the door, howl at the moon, you want to holler at me, I don't care. I can handle that. But certain parts of the counseling aspect, I have to take you across the hall.
Yes.
Not because I don't want to do it, but these are the people that are qualified and are equipped to do it.
And that's being responsible. That's a responsible friend. That's a responsible family member.
Yeah.
Like I know that I can't tread these waters right now. And so I'm not going to leave you stuck. Yeah. But I'm going to take you or show you where you can go. And I tell everyone, I am not equipped to deal with children. That is not my arena. If you bring an issue to me that involves a child, I am going to, and fortunately, I know where to go. I know who to send you to. I'm going to pull out resources of individuals who I know specifically deal with children and trauma because I can't handle it. I can't handle children and trauma. I can't handle children and sickness. I can't do it. If you have a prison ministry, I got you. If we're talking about domestic violence, I got you. Sexual assault, I got you. As long as the area of children does not come into play because I can't handle it. I know that I can't. Now, I'm not going to turn my back on you, but I'm going to be honest and let you know. I don't know. I can't. I don't want to. I'm too sensitive, but I'm going to point you in the right direction of where you can go.
And that's a two-pronged response that is absolutely appropriate. A, you are taking care of yourself because, as you said, you are not equipped to handle it. But B, you're not being equipped. You're getting that person to somebody who is.
Yes.
Who can handle it. And that's what they need. Now, you can come back to my house and say, hey, give me a little chuck in the shoulder and let's have a talk. That's great. I'm not turning my back on you, but you got to go. And that's absolutely that's a very extremely intelligent and necessary boundary for all parties involved.
Yeah. Or you will drive yourself crazy. And again, this is what we do. Myself, Jen, Bob, most of the people who we come into contact with, we are actually counselors, ministers, advocates. This is what we do on a daily basis. But specifically tonight, we're talking about family and friends who this is not your profession. You have to set boundaries for yourself. And we're just under the hour. So, I will ask you guys, started with you, Jen, to close us out for tonight. But the last thing that I want to say to family, to friends, in addition to taking care of yourself, you actually can go and take advantage of resources that are there through domestic violence agencies. You can get counseling for yourself. You can say, I have a friend, I have a loved one, I have a family member who is going through a situation and it is hard on me. You can speak to someone. You can read up on information. You can educate yourself. There are things that you can do to take care of you. There are things that you should do to take care of you. Even when we're talking about taking time for yourself, take a bath, go for a walk, go exercise, go on a trip. You have to care for yourself in that manner, just as the victim or survivor actually does. And depending on how close that person is in your sphere, it can be very, very hard. It's easy for me to put strangers into context, but people who see me every day, people who I'm on a first name basis with, they know, I can just walk over and I can just start talking to her. It gets hard. It gets difficult. And again, like, this is our profession. This is what we do. So I can imagine a stress and a strain on an everyday person who's dealing with a family or friend. So again, I say take advantage of those resources, see a counselor, talk to a counselor. You can call the 24-hour hotlines and talk. You can say, this is weighing on me. This is what a friend is going through. Now I need to talk about it for myself. You can do that. So I highly encourage you to do that. Take care of yourself mentally, physically, and emotionally. And the last thing that I want to say is you also have to take care of yourself financially, because I have been in this situation. When people know that you will help them, they will come to you continuously. At some point, you have to say no. You use your best judgment. But if you have come to me 3 months in a row for me to help you pay your rent, something is wrong. Something is deeper than you need money this month. Do you need a different job? Do you need another job? Do you need education so you can move on? Do you need to learn how to manage your money? Something deeper is going on, and you got to get to the bottom of that. So take care of yourself financially and don't let anybody guilt trip you. I know the feeling. I know it, but really take care of yourself. So those are my last words. So I'll ask you, Jen and Bob, to close us out for tonight with your thoughts.
Yeah, actually, I was kind of going in the same path as same line of thought that you were, Tia. We talked a lot about being an advocate tonight, but being a family or friend can look a lot different. And so a lot of times family or friends don't know what it feels like to be walking through that. And again, this is for any trauma, domestic violence, assault, active addiction, like any trauma, this applies. So like you said, Tia, there is a ripple effect to trauma. And somebody that is abused is the primary receiver of that trauma, but there is secondary trauma, there is tertiary trauma, depending on where you are in relation to that person and what your involvement is with the trauma that they walked through. You are absolutely involved. You are absolutely being affected by this. Don't tell yourself that it's not you. When your body feels tired, when your mind feels tired, when you are depleted, it is for good reason. Don't think that it doesn't affect you. It does affect you. So yes, please seek out resources for yourself. If you haven't been to counseling, please go to counseling. It's if you haven't been to counseling, just in my own experience, I know that it's really difficult to set boundaries because most of us aren't taught that in our just regular lives. So go to counseling, learn how to set boundaries. And then the only other thing I wanted to say is that boundaries can change. They can change with the situation, they can change with the season of life. So you can set boundaries and they don't have to be permanent. It can fluctuate, they can be fluid with whatever is going on. And when we say boundaries, again, I think this is why something like therapy or counseling is so valuable, because you kind of learn what that means and what that is, because it's not a separation entirely from somebody. You know, it's not, oh, this person, you know, this person that I know needs to go to court. And I can't be the person that, you know, stands up for them in their place. I can't do the work for them. I can't hire their lawyer. I can't talk to their lawyer in their stead, but I can show up with them. I can be present with them. I can cry with them afterwards. You know, so there are things that we can do, um, that are still within boundaries that help you, that help victims and survivors move forward. But truly, truly, you are a part of that ripple effect. So take care of yourself too.
Thank you. And Bob, if you would close us for tonight.
Sure, all very true. In fact, I'm going to take a step in the other direction for a second because we've talked about the need for the boundaries. I think we've gotten that point through. I do want to commend the people that are stepping forward to help. And yes. I know this is going to sound really like a left-handed, what kind of statement was that? But the fact that it does hit you and it does weigh on you and you need to take care of that, that also speaks highly of you beside being the person that's trusted. I mean, you're a human being.
Yeah.
You're a human being and you're feeling these things. Don't let those feelings crush you. So take care of yourself, but also, you know, let one of us pat you on the back for being a good human being and being there for the person. So
yes. Awesome. Thank you so much. I think this is a topic that we should revisit. But I thank you both so much. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Jen. Love Bay. If you want to catch up on previous episodes from our program, you can visit our YouTube channel, Suffering in Silence DV. Thank you so much for joining Suffering in Silence with Evangelist Tia here on Love Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio. We're here with you every Friday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern. Love Bay, we want you to remember that we are rising out of the ashes together. Good evening.